I didn't click the broadcast button before. Now I hit the broadcast button. How about I read you that intro? Sometimes you click something and it doesn't really go through.
Oh, look at all these nice people are showing up.
I was very confused for a bit there. I'm very sorry about that delay, everybody. You'd think you do enough of these and you'd understand technology, but it always surprises you. So as people follow in now, hello everyone, and thank you all for joining us this evening. We're celebrating the launch of The Stepping Off Place, Cameron Kelly Rosenblum's debut YA novel. I am Stephanie Hines, the children's manager at Print, a bookstore in Portland, and just a couple housekeeping details to go over real quick. We have copies of The Stepping Off Place available for purchase through Print. I've dropped a link into the Zoom chat there if you'd like to order yours. While we're not open for browsing yet, we are offering free curbside pickup as well as shipping for books over $20. And second, if you're in the Zoom chat, you'll see at the bottom there's a Q&A function. And in that function is where you can submit questions that we'll be getting to after Megan and Cameron are done their portion of the conversation. So please feel free to submit questions at any time. And if you are joining from the Facebook live stream, I'll be monitoring there as well. So comment your questions. There is just a little bit of a delay, so I will feed them in. And now it is my utmost pleasure to be doing the introduction for our authors. Cameron Kelly Rosenblum is the library and media specialist at Pond Cove Elementary School. Before moving to Southern Maine, she studied English literature at Kenyon College and earned her master's in education from Lesley University. She lives with her husband and children with 2 dogs, a cat, and 2 rabbits. Her daughter talked her into after she'd been away at summer camp for 3 weeks. The Stepping Off Place is her first novel. Megan Blakemore is an award-winning author for children and young adults. Megan's books have been honored with inclusion on state lists as the Junior Library Guild selections and as best books from Kirkus and Bank Street College. A former school librarian, Megan has taught writing to students in elementary through graduate school, and she lives in Maine with her husband, children, 2 cats, a leopard gecko, and sometimes a hive of bees. And now, without any further delays or interruptions, I'm going to pass the proverbial mic over to Cameron and Megan. So thank you all once again for being with us this evening.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to start by saying I was so excited when Cameron asked if I would do this with her, because she has been such a champion and cheerleader of children's and young adult authors in Maine and beyond. And so now I get to return the favor. Aww. She sent me this book, and I'm actually not have my light shine on it. I devoured it, and I am so excited for all of you to get to read it as well. You know, I'm actually a little jealous that you get to read it for the first time. So I'm gonna actually now turn it over to Cameron, who's gonna do a little reading.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, I am so excited. Meg is awesome. Her books are great. I share them with my kids in the library all the time, so it's really cool to have her be part of this launch. And I'm very excited to be sharing The Stepping Off Place with you in a real book, because it has been a long time in the process, so it feels kind of surreal that it's actually happening. So my first chapter is a little bit too long to read, so instead of reading the whole chapter, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what's happening, and then I'm going to read the very end of that chapter, because it feels like that's the real crux of the whole novel, really. So this is a book about a friendship, a really strong friendship, and it's between 2 high school girls, Hattie and Reid. Reid is the narrator, and they very much have a relationship that's sort of like a superhero and the sidekick. And Hattie, not the narrator, is the superhero who Reid really looks up to. And at the outset of the book, it's right before senior year, and it's the summertime, and Reid is driving home from work, and she sees these clouds that are really captivating, and they remind her of this poster that Hattie has in her room. It's kind of a recurring thing in the novel, but so she's trying to get in touch with Hattie by phone, and suddenly she sees Hattie a few cars ahead of her in the traffic And so she's trying to catch her, but she can't get Hattie's attention. And she's really frustrated. And so the part I'm going to start reading, you know, she's already like kind of thinking maybe she imagined it, or even is Hattie like blowing her off? She doesn't really know. So I'm just going to start at the end when she's back at her house and no one is home except for her mother. So the stairs squeaked. My mom appeared in her robe. It was nearly dinner. She's the kind of person who comes to breakfast dressed. More alarming, her eyes were red and puffy. "Sit down, honey," she said softly. I had seen her cry once in my life when our cat Leopold died. I was 7. That's it. Either she cried in private or she was superhuman. I'd yet to figure out which. My neck pulsed. "Will you sit?" she repeated. "Please." I obeyed. "What?" My lips tingled. "Where's Spencer?" That's a brother. In a flash of sickening clarity, I saw our family without him, floundering like fish on a hot dock. Who would we even be? My breathing sped up. Mom shook her head. "Spencer's fine." Her voice was strangled. She covered my hands with her cool ones. It's Hattie," she whispered. "Something terrible's happened." Her words bounced off my face. "I just saw her." My mom squared her shoulders. The room vibrated with the fridge. She closed her eyes and kept them closed. I watched tears travel the newly charted path on her cheeks. It was chaos. Blackness leaked over my peripheral vision. "I'm so sorry, Reid," she was saying, "but Hattie drowned last night in Maine." "No, she didn't," my voice said, but a hole started to tear open deep inside me. I saw her in my mind, passing the Jaguar just a few minutes ago, didn't I? She looked up at me from her chair. Her lips vanished, she squeezed them so tight. She nodded and nodded, her nostrils red and trembling. "Stop doing that!" I wanted to slap her away, this weird version of my mother. "She did not!" My mother was a crumbling statue, dropping her head. Her shoulders convulsed twice. She inhaled and leveled her eyes with mine. "Reid, it's true. Her Uncle Baxter called an hour ago. I spoke to him myself. Hattie," her tears ran in rivulets, but her eyes had mine in a chokehold. "They're investigating it as a suicide." I heard myself laugh through a sob. "That's fucking ridiculous." I couldn't look at her and took my glass to the sink. The air had dissolved into buzzing molecules swimming around me. "It's still unclear," she whispered, "but..." "Shut up!" I threw the glass down. I never talked to her like this, and it was empowering and disgusting. The glass didn't break, and I whirled to yell at her more, but her face was red and twisted in a silent cry. "Oh, God," I croaked, nauseous. Rubber legs carried me to the back door. Boomer heard the screen slide open and rushed to my side. We bumped into each other, and I stumbled onto the flagstone patio to the edge of the pool, searching the sky. No more evenly spaced confections. The clouds had dissolved into tatters, ripped sails that betrayed me. Our O'Keefe sky was gone. I couldn't breathe. I would never again. I read that sentence wrong. I never would again. That's the end of the chapter 1. So
It's beautiful.
yes.
So, that actually leads very well to my first question for you. So clearly this is a novel that explores grief, and you do so beautifully, excuse me, but I'm sure it was difficult to write. So could you talk a little bit about the process of writing about grief? How did you go there? Yeah.
So this book is totally fictional, but I did lose my very good dear friend from childhood. She died much older, and I was shocked when I learned that she took her own life. And so this was kind of a way for me to, I had missed the funeral, and I time had gone by. So she had moved across the country, and I was really devastated by it. And I really wanted to honor our friendship. And I decided to try to write a book. At first I was like, oh, I'll try adults. And then I didn't want to write because we didn't live near each other as adults. It was really, so I just tried to imagine what it would have been like to lose someone in high school. And at that time, she was like my idol. And so she actually moved away before we went to high school. So this is truly fictional because none of these things happened. She'd already moved across the country. But so I think that's, writing about the sadness was very, very hard. And so, because it was very real to me, but at the same time, I wanted to, that's really why I wrote it out of order. It's a nonlinear narrative, as Meg knows, but it jumps around in time, and I really jumped around in time to give myself a break from writing the sad parts, because I really didn't want to write a sad book. I didn't want to write something that I wouldn't want to read myself, and I am just a little bit too much of a optimist or something. Like, I can't dwell in that darkness too long. That's just not my way of being. So I decided that if I the best way to honor the friendship was to have it jump around in time, so that like the next chapter, it jumps back to be, you know, right at the end of school before Hattie left for her Maine vacation home. And, you know, so you get to see their friendship in action. And, you know, a solid half the book is their friendship in action, and sort of antics and romance and all kinds of other things are kind of in there, normal things that high schools do. But then ultimately, Reid needs to come to grips with this loss because it's such a big part of her life. So she really doesn't know how to move on. And so that is a long-winded way of answering your question, that it was personal. It really was. So it was a catharsis for me. And, you know, it's my first book, as we have pointed out. And when I started it, you know, I didn't know if it was going to get published. So I really was writing from the heart, but I never would want to, I've worked very hard to make it totally fictional, so that there was no way I was exposing anyone's privacy or anything like that. I would never do that. So, yeah.
That makes sense. Okay. So as a reader, I really appreciated the dual timelines and the breaks. And I thought that you just did such a wonderful job of capturing the antics and capturing what it's really like, what it feels like to be a teen, especially in the summer, when there's a little bit more freedom to roam around. So, I mean, there's those multiple timelines, but you also, in addition to really delving into her friendship with Hattie, there's the romance pieces, there's her family piece, there's a piece of her at work. How did you manage all of those different strands?
There were a lot of revisions, but really it's kind of funny. I had color-coded Post-its. Like the first draft, it was really straight from the gut. It was like, I'd write a sad chapter and then I'd be like, okay, I need a break from that. And I would just switch to something else. And then after I finished it, I was able to, then the work began, right? So I color-coded all the things when Hattie has no idea. I mean, when Reid is, you know, everything's still there, the old understanding of the world. That got green Post-its. And then I had like hot pink Post-its for the scenes that took place in Maine, because about a good solid chunk of the book is in Maine and the rest of it's in Connecticut. And then I had another for recent past, and then some of them were flashbacks way earlier to like middle school years. So yeah, so it was a lot of colored Post-its, and I had them on a giant whiteboard that moved around our house. And you know, my husband was like, can we get this out of here? This is really ugly. But you know, that was how I kept it straight. And then I had a lot of help from, and you know, my editors, my awesome agents. They were really helpful to give me the, you know, have that vision from a little bit more distance so they could help me out with that. So it was definitely a lot of work I don't know if I would do it again, I say, but the book I'm working on right now, of course, I have 3 points of view. So really I'm back to my color-coded Post-its, and it just seems to be what I do, I guess. So yeah.
I'm sitting here next to my color-coded.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah, every writer does them, right?
I think I learned that from Linda Mullally Hunt, the note cards.
Rock star.
Also sort of in the thinking about how you built this story, a lot of times we talk about world building if we're talking about fantasy or sci-fi. I felt like I could walk into this town and I could drive my car around and navigate. I felt like I would know where to get the best sandwich. You know, is it based on a real place? Is it imagination?
Yes. So, you know, I had to make up so much of it that really I drew upon my hometown to just make something easy. So I really was picturing the main drag of my town in Connecticut. I mean, the Boston Post Road runs right through the middle. It's Route 1. I mean, we have it up here too, but down there it's called the Post Road. And so I just used the Post Road, and I used neighborhoods that I knew, and that made it really easy for me because I know it so well. And especially at that age, when you get your license and you drive around and you literally know every nook and cranny of the entire town. So yeah, that was that. Yeah, that was the Connecticut part.
Yeah, it was really, I mean, it's both in terms of feeling like I knew the place, but also just that feeling of that summer in high school when you have your license. I thought it was so well captured, and you know, it didn't feel out of time though. So you're saying you're writing from, you know, your own teen years in that town, but you also were able to, I think, incorporate a lot of modern elements of what it's like to be a teen.
Thanks.
Without it feeling too.
I have some children who, you know, keeping it real at the house. Yeah.
So as you said, about half the book takes place in Connecticut, maybe a little more, and then there's the part that takes place in Maine. And since, you know, we're in Maine, I thought it was really interesting, and I wanted to talk a little bit about how it's not home for the characters, but the special role it plays for each of them.
Mm-hmm. So that I completely, if for those of you who live in the area, I pretty much imagined a cross of Mackworth Island and Monhegan Island as being the Darrow's family compound. That's Hattie's family. They own this island. They're obviously very wealthy, but they're very unconspicuous wealthy people, if that's doable when you have your own island. But they share the island with a close friend, so there's it feels like its own private island. And I love Maine, and I am not from Maine. I am married to a native Mainer, and so it was really great to let you know, I think everyone who lives in Maine kind of wants to show off because it's just such a gorgeous state. And so I thought, oh, this is perfect because Hattie's character is very much in she almost needs there to be this natural world that's more that's bigger than her, because she's such like a force of nature herself. I think she needs to think that there's something wild out there. And so this Maine island with the crashing surf and the rocky ledge and the, you know, everything's a little bit bigger than it would be like when you're at a beach on the Long Island Sound. They're beautiful too, but it's very calm. It's just an entirely different thing. Like Maine is way more wild than Connecticut. And I wanted that to be, it kind of became a perfect metaphor for Hattie's, you know, her love of the wild side of things. Like she's always kind of pushing the envelope. She's always doing something a tiny bit too dangerous. And so, yeah. So Maine it just fell into place. I was like, oh, wow, I didn't do that on purpose, but it's working. So
Yeah, I thought it was beautiful, and I thought it was beautifully done. The contrast between the two places worked really well, and I think both towns served, or the island and the town served almost as additional characters in the story.
I wanted the family, Hattie's family is like this big, you know, sort of 5 kids, big, you know, she's the baby, and they're all sort of like that. They all, or at least to Reid's perspective, they're all just a little bit larger than life. So that wild side to the island, and, you know, doing campfires, and Hattie just automatically, like, naturally can build the most raging campfire ever. And, you know, she's just like sailing, and yeah, so.
And one of the lines that really stuck out at me, you know, they have a private island, she has all these horses, and at one point in time she says, we're not loaded. Like, Hattie doesn't really seem to understand to a certain extent. And Reid's, it's, you know, it's not like a have and have not situation, but Reid seems a little bit more grounded. I thought it was impressive the way you worked class and wealth into this novel as well.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want it to be about that, but it certainly is part of it. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I think that's part of the world building that I think that you did so well. Is, you know, this, you could really feel like you were experiencing their teen years. So I had to ask, there's Reid, I don't think I'm giving anything away. Reid's summer job is working in a dinner theater and she has to wear these awful shoes and these awful pantyhose. Is that at all based on?
That is actually true. My first job was at a dinner theater, and I was a hostess, and it's pretty much exactly like the book, where it's like this place that no one from the town actually seemed to go to. It was like, it drew from, so it was like nobody ever talked about it and ever knew it really existed. But then, you know, a whole bunch of the kids from the high school worked there. So yeah, I love that. I remember thinking that I wanted to show kids working. I feel like sometimes that gets left out of YA books. I don't know. So I just wanted to have them, I wanted her to be real. I didn't want it to be, like you say, I didn't want it to be where they're so wealthy they don't have to think about anything like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you want to do another reading?
Sure. How much time do we have?
I think we have.
Should I? What's that?
We still have time.
Okay.
Something
All right. So maybe I'm going to put my glasses on, but maybe I'll read the beginning of chapter 2. So this is 2 months earlier, right before, well, I don't have to tell you because it says it right here. Okay. Chapter 2. Hattie and I drifted around the pool on our floats like lily pads. We hadn't said or moved much in the last hour, soaking in the end of a long summer afternoon of sun. Sorry, I misread my own writing. A long afternoon of sun. We had officially become Scofield seniors today at 12:35 p.m. Eastern Standard Time after the final exam. It was Hattie's last night in Scofield, and thank God, because a kind of bitchy girl who just graduated, Sabrina Bradley, was having a huge summer send-off party, and I would never go alone. Tomorrow, Hattie would leave for the Thimble. When I first heard of the summer house on an island named Thimble, I pictured a quaint cottage with brightly painted lobster buoys hanging on the front door. Wrong. The Thimble was a private island the Darrows had owned for 3 generations by my count. The house had 6 bedrooms and was part of a family compound, complete with a stable, a dock, and a boathouse. Mr. Darrow loved sailing. I was gazing at a group of clouds that resembled a school of fish, debating whether they were worth mentioning when Hattie said, "I'm going to lose it tonight at Bradley's." Hattie's the kind of person who calls a junior snubbing senior like Sabrina by her last name, to her face, which is so brazen it impresses the senior and earns Hattie acceptance. Fondness, even. Huh? I responded lazily. My fingers played across the top of the warm water trapped in the raft with me. I just decided. Hattie's voice is sort of low and a little raspy, which can make it seem like she's letting you in on a joke, which a lot of times she is. Now she lay on her belly, eyes closed, which we both knew was her way of prompting me to question her. Always game, I said, care to elaborate? I'm getting this whole virginity thing over with, she replied. Tonight. I rose to my elbows. Cold water spilled into the raft. What? She still didn't move. I don't want to be a virgin anymore. Think about it. It's a burden. A burden? Yeah, you keep waiting for the right guy and all that is just bullshit. There is no right guy in Scofield, which means I go through senior year a virgin, and the next thing you know, I'm in college, and nobody in college wants to sleep with a virgin. Seriously? I cocked one eyebrow. Yeah, nobody worth sleeping with anyway. I'm not going to be the inexperienced one. You can spot inexperience a mile away. I couldn't suppress my...
It's 7:30.
Oh, sorry about that. I couldn't suppress my laughter. Oh my God, you think you could tell who's a virgin by looking at them? Can't you? Compare Fiona Mayhos to Emma Rose. You're ridiculous. But picturing Fiona's clear eyes and uncomplicated smile, I had to admit Hattie might be right. As for Emma Rose, she'd probably hit on my dad if she had the chance. What did my eyes give away? I held my breath and rolled into the water. I think I should stop there.
Yeah. So that was sort of a setup, because my last question that I wanted to ask you about was, or it's not even really a question. I just wanted to say that I love the way you approach the topic of sex with these girls. So, you know, Hattie has made this decision, and then Reid has her own story. Did that just come out of the story, or was that something you went in hoping to do sort of a sex positive?
I did want to do a sex positive because I feel like that I'm not saying it's not out there. I have not read enough where I find like, oh, this is really realistic. You know, I feel like it gets glossed over a lot, and I understand that, you know, you're not going to go hog wild on that topic for young adults, but at the same time, it's like, who are we kidding? Like, they're teenagers, right? And they're curious about these things, and they talk about these things. And so I just kind of wanted that to be in there. And then, yeah, I don't know. It just kind of started to take on a life of its own, and I couldn't, then it became a huge plot point. So I think I was trying to get at the notion of having secrets and sort of how that is, I think that you know, we all have our personal side, and sometimes that's okay, and sometimes it's silly. And, you know, it's kind of like I wanted to play with, like, who are you actually not wanting to talk about? Who don't you want to know? Is it because you yourself don't really want to talk about it because you kind of wish it never happened? Or is it that you actually are embarrassed for your friend to know? Because most friends are pretty forgiving, I think, but that's why I stuck with those plot points and kept with them.
Yeah, and I thought, again, it was really realistic where, you know, the decisions that these girls make, how they each react to their own decisions was really in keeping with their characters, which I thought was powerful.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I'm fortunate because I was a little connected to a real person, and even though none of those things ever happened, I had a real personality to draw on. I mean, a little traumatized, but that helps.
So, Steph, do we want to turn it over to
thank you
from the
letting us be the flies on the wall for that amazing conversation. As a reminder to everyone, if you look down at the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A function, and you can submit questions. And before we get to those, I actually had a question, Cameron. So speaking as someone who in middle school was told by definitely at least one person, probably multiple people, that I was like my best friend's sidekick, that she was like the leading person and I was the backup character, which doesn't feel great. I was just wondering, like, if you could speak a little bit more about that dynamic in particular, and this idea of being jealous of your best friend, which I think is a super common thing that kids experience.
Yeah, and I really, so I am totally, you know, a reformed sidekick. Like I was definitely, I think, I have an amazing older sister who is 4 years older than me. And because she was that much older, I mean, it's nothing now, but when you're a little kid and someone is 8 and you're only 4, it's like, you know, you might as well be from different planets. And I just looked up to her, and she was so dynamic and confident and all these things that I was like, you know, I was always trailing behind, and part of it had nothing to do with anything, but I was just younger, right? And so I actually realized later in life, as an adult, I look back on things, and I picked a lot of my relationships I sought to echo that. And like even this friendship that I had with the girl who has passed away, I was the sidekick, and I don't think she ever saw it that way, and I don't think Hattie ever sees it that way. It's more a perception in Reid's own head, really, and then it becomes sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy, because if you think you're the sidekick and you act like a sidekick, then everyone's going to assume you're the sidekick, right? So I think I don't feel like a sidekick at all anymore, but I love, that was kind of like a shout out to all the sidekicks out there, because, you know, I found it fascinating. Like my husband, I wish he was here. He's like very larger than life, charismatic. And, you know, we got married when I was still young. So I think I just I gravitate towards larger than life personalities, you know, and so I wanted to just play with that in the book. Thanks for noticing.
Yeah, thank you for featuring that dynamic. It's something that I'm noticing a lot more in media, and I always get excited. So we have a question from Joe Zarinko, who was wondering what your daily routine for writing is. Do you have a specific process that you follow?
Joe and I went to college together. Hi, Joe. What is my process? Yes, I get up at like 5 a.m. and I know, and I work for, you know, 3 or 4 hours in the morning, because I'm, like I mentioned, I have teenagers. So nobody, you know, especially in, you know, this whole COVID situation, nobody really gets up and bothers me. So it's a really nice chunk of time. And then, you know, if I'm under deadline or something, like I am right now, you know, then I'll come back to it later in the day. But I find that, you know, once, obviously for any writer, I think, sometimes life gets in the way and you just can't get to whatever you're working on. And I'm sure Meg can speak to this, but it's like, if you take 2 days or 3 days away from that manuscript, it's like, takes so long to get your headspace back in there. So I really try not to do that anymore, because it's hard to get your creative space back. And then you realize I'll write 20 more pages and I'll be like, wait a minute, I was going to do this and that was such a better idea, but I forgot about it because I took the weekend off or whatever. So I just try to keep with it. It's very therapeutic for me, just sort of, it's sort of like my meditation. So it doesn't always feel like, you know, incredibly hard work or something, but it does, you know, I'm just an early riser, so it works out. It works out with my house.
Thank you. Another question from Alexandra Levick is, what was your favorite scene to write in the novel? As long as it's not a spoiler.
Okay, so this is great. This is great for people who because I had to do a lot of revisions, and Alexandra Levick knows this very well because she is my agent, and it's great when people prod me. I love it now. I used to be like, are you kidding me? I'm not writing this again. But now I love it when people ask me questions, because once I've already got the groundwork for the basic story, and then someone says, okay, we need to get to know this character a little bit better. Then I'm like, ooh, okay, what can I have them do? So my favorite scene is when they dress up as Ichabod Crane and the Headless Horseman, and they that came in like the 3rd revision. That was never in there. Look at yeah, it's great. I loved it because it was just, they basically wanted to scare the hell out of the boys' soccer team, and they totally did it. And they just pulled off the whole thing, and they had like built these costumes, and that was super fun for me to write. And I thought, you know, it almost didn't have a super great reason to stay in the book except for that I just loved it. So I built a little hook into it that comes back later in the story just so I could keep it in because I loved it.
And doesn't have a full name on this question, but it says, Cameron, you are a very engaging reader as well. Is there an audiobook? And if so, are you going to be reading that story?
There is an amazing audiobook with an actual professional reader who does a much better job than me, and it is on Audible right now. And it is also, if you're not an Audible consumer, you can get the digital download anywhere, Barnes & Noble, I'm sure print. You know, I don't know how you guys sell digital books, but there definitely is. It released today as well. And I've not heard the whole thing myself, but I heard enough of it. It was really kind of a trip to hear somebody reading, like an actor reading your words. That was a cool moment. But thank you, whoever said I was engaging, because that is my day job with the little children I read.
So I just dropped a link into the chat as well. Print has a partnership with Libro FM, which offers a lot of similar formats as Audible, except instead of the money going to that large company, it goes to independent bookstores. So if you're interested in getting the audiobook, definitely recommend. And then Julie Ota asked if you were writing another book. I think you'd mentioned something a little bit about it before. Is there anything you can tell us about this next book?
Yes, I can tell you a little bit about it. It's called Sweeping Glass, which is a reference to rowing. It's set at a prep school in New Hampshire that I completely made up. And it's called Lycroft Phelps School. And it deals, again, not a light topic, but I'm trying to make it really nuanced so that, again, I'm really very focused on making it engaging for the reader. But it's about sexual assault. And I wanted to write something that was post Me Too, so that the characters are aware of Me Too, and so that rolls into the plot somewhat, because I feel like there's some magnificent books. I've actually got a lot of them on my bookshelf, you know, Laurie Halse Anderson. There's so many really beautifully done books on the topic, but I was like, hey, you know, no one's really talked about this since this happened. And then that one definitely also, of course, has class issues, and because it's at a pretty elite private school. And a lot of the characters are on the rowing team. And so that's where that title comes from.
So there's the rowing team in the next book. There's some track moments in this book. Are you yourself an athlete as well, or just admirable?
No, I just write about sport. Mostly I am like really athletic at rolling back and forth across the den in my chair. That's my sport these days. I'm you know, I love sports. My daughter is a rower. She's at a coxswain. She got recruited to Cox in college, in fact. So that's pretty cool. So I've always loved the sport of rowing. Even when I was going to graduate school in Boston, we used to go to the Head of the Charles, and I just think it's a gorgeous sport. And so I wanted to do something with that. And it kind of fit to be in a private school. So that gave me an excuse to write about rowing. And then I also had the one of the main characters is a ballet dancer. And so I get to write about that. Before my daughter is a coxswain, she was very intensely into ballet. And so I feel like I got to pick the two sports that I know a lot about. Cross country, that's another sport she did. But I ran when I was younger, but yeah. These days I do hiking, a lot of hiking with my family, but you know, the rowing machine is about the extent of mine. Yeah.
Quinn was wondering who your favorite author was, and did they influence your work at all?
Okay, I have about 150 favorite authors, but I can say that the person who probably most directly influenced me is the YA author, John Green. And that is because John Green went to Kenyon College, which you said at the beginning, that's where I went. And he had the same writing teacher as me. He's younger than me, but So I'm a children's librarian, which means generally I work with kindergarten through fourth, fifth, sometimes I would have little groups with older kids, but I decided because this book, The Fault in Our Stars, was getting so much press, I decided, okay, wow, I want to read this, because before that, a lot of the YA was built around, like dystopian, and that is just so, I love those kinds of stories, but I could never write that. And so when I read John Green and how realistic his voice was, I was kind of like, wait a minute, I could try this. I had been trying to get published in middle grade, I should mention too, which obviously did not happen. But I think I found my stride with the YA voice because it just came so much easier to me. I really had to work to, like, I don't know, not be so, I don't know. YA is easier for me. It's just like, I don't know. I channel my inner 17-year-old or something. I don't know.
I know you spoke earlier kind of generally about your writing process, but someone was wondering what your favorite part of the writing process is.
Revision. Oh my God, I love revision, because like I said, when you have the groundwork and you sort of already know that you know the characters, it doesn't always get on the page. And so it takes other readers to read it and say, wait, that person's supposed to be like that. I didn't get that. So then it gives you an opportunity to make something up. I just love making stuff up. So I love revising. I love also going in and really I love polishing the language, like down to the sentence level. I love language. I've always loved language. I love poetry. I so appreciate the written word that I love having a chance to do that in that draft. In the first draft, they're really bad. And then, so I just work on it. I love that part.
So we have 2 questions left. An anonymous question is, where did you get your start in writing?
I have had literally a dream of writing since like a published book. I definitely started writing in kindergarten with pictures. And I swear, I really believe that I was really big into my Fisher-Price, my Fisher-Price sets. And I think all that time just spent playing with the farm animals and all the different, like, they look like the Partridge Family characters and everything. That's definitely aging myself. But I would make up all these stories, and I think I was writing. Like, I think I was already writing when I was just a little kid. I just had this thing about making up stories. And so, but when I got serious, I chose Kenyon College because it has an amazing English department. At the time I went there, until I got that teacher that John Green and I both had, they had no, they did not have any creative writing. Everything was literature based. So they steeped you in all that, but then they never really gave you a chance to write your own stuff. So Linda, it was Legos. For Linda, it was Legos. Yeah, so I think then I started to get serious, and then I realized I actually had to get a job. And so I loved teaching, and I was a teacher for a long time. And then I switched to being a librarian, and that's when I was like, I am getting this done. And so I just started really getting intense about it. I joined SCBWI, which is the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, which many people are part of. I found those workshops. I loved them. I got so involved. I started hosting with my friend Julie Kingsley, who's also from Maine. We would host our own workshops and things. And yeah, so I think that it's always been a part of what I wanted to do, and I'm just thrilled. I cannot quite express how thrilling it is to be sitting here and like, oh my God, it happened. I'm so excited about it.
And I think our last question for the evening, I saw Kimberly Nero posted in the chat. Are there any, and it keeps scrolling. Are there any parts of the stepping off place that ended up being cut? And if so, do you miss them? Can you tell us a little bit about that, especially since revision's your favorite part, or their
Cutting's not my favorite part of the movie. I'm trying to think. I'm sure there was. I think one thing I really learned writing this book is that everything you do in a novel needs to serve more than one purpose. And if you have a scene in there, like that's what I was saying about the scene with the Headless Horseman when they are on the horses. It was a really fun scene, but it didn't really serve a purpose except for to show their antics, which I tried to argue was good enough. But really, it needs to do more. It needs to carry some of the weight of the storytelling, move the narrative along. And so, you know, I know there was too many. I had much to draw upon for high school parties. So I think I might have had to cut a few party scenes because they were like, all right, we get it. But I was always just trying to go for that dynamic of the team dynamic. So, but it's fine. You know, you replace it with something you like better and it all works out. But you don't think that going in, but it's always, I really listen to what people tell me to do. I really trust the people that are, I love my writing friends and I love my agents and I love my editor and I trust them. And so I live there.
Thank you so much for sharing the book with us, for celebrating the launch of your debut novel. You're officially a published author now. So exciting to be a part of this. To everyone, I once again placed a link in the chat to where you can purchase The Stepping Off Place, as well as Megan's books. Megan, thank you especially for being our In Conversation partner today and directing this conversation. We are so thankful to have both new writers and beloved established authors in our greater Portland community, and it makes my job as the children's manager super easy.
So fun. So
it
fun.
really
Thank
was so much fun.
I'm so grateful to you guys for helping me put this, you know, helping me, no, putting this together so we had a fun venue. This is great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. And just a quick question for both of you before you sign off. If people want to keep tabs on what you're doing, what is the best way to stay updated on your work?
Probably, go ahead, Meg.
Oh, probably Twitter for me. And I can put it in the chat, but it's at Megan B. Fraser is my Twitter handle.
Yeah, same. I use Twitter a lot as a librarian and as a writer. So it's at C. Kelly Rose. And then I also have a website, but I know it won't be as up to speed as, you know, Twitter.
All right, well, thank you again, and I hope everyone has a wonderful evening. If you missed any part of the chat, it should be up on our Facebook page pretty soon after. Just takes a little bit to upload, but I hope everyone has a great night.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Bye.